Inside at last.
Welcome, fellow Teffers, to Inside at Last, the one and only thief dedicated podcast. My name is Alex, and today I'm joined by the little hemorrhoids that are constantly following me, but I got used to them. Welcome, Jake and Seth. Hello.
Hello.
Hi.
So, Chet Ackmeyer, can you please tell us if everybody is hearable, if everything's fine? We are live streaming again. And yeah, it's 2024. We finally could do it. And it's Sabotage at Soulforge. The last mission of the original Thief 2. And yeah, this will be the last podcast episode ever because we covered everything, nothing to discuss anymore. We're done. Yay. Because I don't know, was there another Thief game to discuss? Maybe a first one, but I don't know.
Shall see.
First of all, Alex is the most clear and loudest. That's good. Maybe I could turn down the microphone a bit for the live stream.
Maybe turn myself up. How do I sound?
How is this?
I can both. Well, I think it's fine, and in the final product, it will be cleared. So, Sabotage at Soulforge. First of all, I want to say something. I really, really, really love the word Soulforge. I think it's such a beautiful name, and you can like imagine something. You know, you know there. You know, you have a picture in your head, and I don't know, and it totally works for what it is. Or what do you guys think?
Definitely conjures an image. I feel like when I hear Soulforge, I'm like, it's the fire within, spiritual fire within.
It sounds like a heavy metal album, but in a good way. And it's
or a band name.
Yeah,
the new album of Soulforge.
Soulforge. Yeah, exactly. It does. But Oh, sorry. I was gonna say it's a great name. It definitely invokes an image, like I think you guys are alluding to. So I like it.
Now that you said it, I'm imagining like a band out of Daniel Tron and Jack Black and guys like with a similar hair and beard style, you know.
That'd be great.
Soulforge. Oh yeah. Now I have a thing. Like will have to say it like that the whole podcast.
That would be great. And also, if somebody in the community we know many people in the community have artistic talent, it'd be great to see like either what you described, Alex, or maybe like have Karis and Garrett and somebody's on guitar, somebody's on bass, somebody's on drums, like Victoria's on drums, and it's just Soulforge.
Yeah, right. They are all headbanging. Or then there's a rapper, Soulforge Boy.
Karis is the front man, and he opens every show with "All shall hear the word of Karis."
Soulforge Boy say, "Oh," say, "Oh," like that. Sabotage at Soulforge, the last mission. I think the opinions about it are very divided, as I would say since mission 10. Every mission was very divided among the community, no matter if it was masks or kidnap or whatnot. Many Teffers gave us their opinions on YouTube, on Twitter, on our Discord channel, and of course on the TTLG forums. And yeah, there will be a lot to cover. Thank you, everybody. Maybe we cannot cover all of the comments, but we will try. I think some of them, have repeated opinions. It was great to have so many great feedbacks about this final mission. Seth, do you want to start and maybe put us into the picture? What is Sabotage at Soulforge all about? Why does it start? Where does it start? What is going on?
Absolutely. So, Sabotage at Soulforge is the last mission of Thief 2. The setup is that Victoria has decided to attack the Mechanist stronghold. She hasn't cleared this with her PR team, and they are unhappy to hear about it. So Garrett quickly arrives on the scene to discover an overwhelmed and beleaguered Victoria in front of an unwilling audience. The tomatoes fly, and in a final act of self-sacrifice, Victoria plants enough plant life to sustain a reaction inside Soulforge, leaving our hero to solve the issue at hand.
Yep. And that's basically where we start. Like, she explodes in a burst of plants, and then we can observe the scenery in the game. And I think it's a very interesting start to this mission because, um, there's the plant life suddenly is so present, which is of course strange when you are in a mechanist stronghold. Um, and it also shows, um, I don't know. It's like you expect her, if she explodes and sacrifices herself, you would expect that now the whole thing is covered in moss and plants. But it's just like, okay, here's this little area where she exploded. It's green. Looks like in the German System Shock version, the blood. It was green as well. And then there are some plants going through some of the ventilation uh, things. And that's
It's a
it.
pretty slight effect. Yeah, it's a pretty slight effect, and I think that's a good point that you bring up. And I imagine if this was made today, I mean, this is obviously speculative, but I imagine if it was made today, you'd have more of a intricate weaving of the mechanist architecture with the plant life, because textures obviously are more complicated and geometry is more complicated now. I don't know. What do you guys think?
I think that's true. I do think it does something really efficiently right at the beginning, though, and that is that we see this very green area, and then there are some vines leading up the stairs to the north. I think it's to the north, and they split off in two different directions. And it sets up a little bit of really beautiful design language where you learn at the beginning that the vines are leading you somewhere, and then they kind of stop. And later on through the level, as you're wandering around, if you see a little bit of green, there's almost always a hidden item, like something useful, a frog egg, a vine arrow, fire arrows in a couple of places that are located near those vines. So you can kind of, it stands out because there shouldn't be plant life inside the Mechanist Cathedral, and it kind of leads you around to like these useful little pockets. I thought that was actually really cool.
That's totally right. Yeah, I didn't think about it, but I recognized that. There always is something, but it didn't come to my mind that this is like a thing they thought about. But yeah, it's obvious. Um,
It's
yeah, Jake.
Oh, I was gonna say it's a nice change of pace too, even though it's not perfect, because I think one of the things that we've talked about before on the show and people talk about in the community is kind of the contrast between Thief 1 and Thief 2, because obviously Thief 1 has more of the pagan structures, and obviously by its nature in the story that Thief 2 has the mechanist and all the cold machinery, and at least this mission, while not perfect, at least the beginning part especially, gives you like a nice, like, those worlds have kind of like collided. Obviously it's part of the story as well, is things have come to the climax and things have come to a head, and now the pagan and mechanist showdown, the final showdown. So it's cool, even though it's maybe not perfect due to time and I'm sure other reasons.
Maybe
They're running out of
not
budget.
perfect.
They're running out of time.
Maybe not perfect is a nice phrasing.
Mm.
Yeah,
We'll
but I
get
think
into that. Yeah.
this mission has more polish, it feels like to me, than the former ones.
Masks
Yeah,
and casing.
yeah, and I don't know. This one at least feels like, nowadays I can see, okay, this is a very huge mission, so they couldn't put in too much detail all over the place. But in general, it makes sense. But I also think it's pretty underwhelming as well, because you believe that the hideout, or not that the hideout, it's obvious, but the place where Karath resides is something very glorious, very impressive looking. And this is totally not the case. It's mostly gray and gray and gray. And
It's very
the
institutional, yes.
maybe, I can also imagine like maybe this is like Kara's way of his clean way of architecture he likes. I don't know. And I think you can see that in the office where you can find like the blueprints, with all the little safes.
Yep.
I think this shows like, okay, gigantism, I think is a word. Like it's very huge, everything, but also very clean and minimalistic, which is like a modern approach, especially for the fictional mid-age theme we have here. But still, it's like, it doesn't represent anything the mechanists stand for me, because the mechanists for me are like warm colors, like this bronze looking thing. And this totally doesn't resemble that. There's maybe one or two rooms that look like what I would expect from this.
Yeah, I found that there were a lot of hallways that felt underdecorated and underpopulated.
Yep.
But they often connect to hub rooms that are very well textured. And then I recall a specific moment where I turned off a corridor and went into like this little engine/machine room, and for some reason there's a really beautiful furnace or something. I don't know what it's called or what it's supposed to be. It's very tall. That's like, it looks like the main menu. And it's just like beautifully textured with like window textures. I recognize them as windows, and like other pieces of filigree and metal. And I'm like, wow, somebody spent a ton of time in a room you can entirely miss. It is not a mission critical room.
Yeah, it's that one room where this huge machinery is in the middle, right? That you cannot
Yes.
interact with. Yeah, that's what the room I meant, like one or two rooms. So I remember this room specifically, because yeah, that's how I would imagine the mechanist central HQ, Kara's bedroom, whatever.
Yeah, it does. I think when I think of this level too, and as I was replaying it for the show, there is a lot of, like you said, Seth, like sub hub rooms and hallways, and like I do think I agree with what you're saying too, Alex. Like it doesn't really quite seem as you think that something Karas's base would be more lavish and well decorated while still being machine like, and also this mission like often it's hard for me to think of the map in my mind and get it down intuitively because of all the like the hub areas and kind of sub rooms and hallways that are kind of plain. Like things don't always, in my mind anyway, maybe you guys and everybody who's played it has a different experience, but it's hard to think of my mind, okay, here's where I am, here's where I need to go without kind of consulting a map or really stopping to think about it. It's not, I think, the most intuitive layout, in my opinion. But
I think it's kind of deliberately a maze, but I don't think that's a strength of this level. I think it actually makes it less enjoyable, especially considering some of the later sections that are like gauntlets, and you just kind of like. I have a lot of opinions about that. I don't know if you want me to get into them now or later. I can save them if you want.
I think it was mentioned among some comments. I think the whole orientation thing is a topic in this mission. I actually think that it's, if you compare this to like Thief 1-esque missions, especially when you played the Black Parade, for example, fan missions, then this is actually pretty easy to orientate in. I never really had a problem here. I don't know if I'm maybe more focused because I'm always anticipating it to become like that, and maybe I start, building a map in my head more efficiently than I usually do, or it's the clean theme that helps. I don't know. But I think every room is very recognizable because of the minimalism. So you can see, oh, this is the room where this object is in the middle, and oh, this is the room where that object is on the right. So it's easier to diverse for me, and I was actually surprised by that.
I found a lot of the level has like a left right path that's fairly linear. So like you hit a junction and you can either turn left or turn right. And those areas are totally fine and very navigable.
Especially
the
from
pi-
the beginning, I would say.
Exactly.
The ground level, yeah.
Yep, for sure.
But once you're trying to traverse those sections in the middle, that's where the hallways become annoying and problematic for me, because you have
I
all these
agree.
weird junctions on different levels of the building, and like figuring out which connects to where is kind of a chore, especially since the maps offer absolutely no 3D information.
Yep, I agree. I think the first part, and that's the interesting thing about this mission, and I think this is what we kind of alluded to earlier a little bit, but it's kind of segregated. Like the first half, obviously, like the objective is to build the beacon, and then the second half is to run through that gauntlet that you alluded to earlier, Seth, and flip all the switches. And I agree with what you said, Alex. Like the first part of the mission, it's much easier to you go left, you go right, and you have the different machine rooms, and that's fairly easy to navigate. But like you said, Seth, I feel like once you get to the middle of the mission, there's a bunch of ladders to climb and different sort of little hidden pathways to go through. That's kind of where I think that the confusion kind of comes in. The beginning is pretty self-explanatory because you just loop back around to a big square. So
Yep. I think that's one part of the divided opinions on that, because I think it starts pretty well, and later it's like someone who opens up a topic and starts very well, but then he loses himself in too many details and no one can follow anymore. But the beginning is very welcoming, in my opinion, or always a nice, obvious, nice surprise until you get to the point where it becomes a bit annoying.
yes, the various
Yeah.
rooms.
I find as soon as I cross the northern apps, I am just less happy than I was before that point.
Yeah, that's true. And the whole thing is like really stupid. Like, who would build it and use it like that? I know it's a game, and I know they built the missions first, and then they put in, everything they needed for the story and stuff. But let's start with the obvious. This is like a church factory thing.
A
And
chackery.
yeah, right. And that's cool. I think that's a cool theme, because it puts everything together, because this is a religion. And also this is a religion based on technology, which is, and the theme is very fitting. But then there's the logic. Like, they have those machines that now automatically, with very easy to use functionality, can mass produce things like mines, which they had to build by hand before. But of course, they put every machine necessary to build one certain final item in different rooms on different levels, which is totally stupid. Because, like, you have this machinery and you have those very clever engineers at the mechanists, but then they couldn't figure out to put like 3 machines you need to craft one item in a row. Like, no. First you need this glass canister, then you bring it up with this little elevator where you cannot even put like a cart full of material. So one guy comes up with that glass thing, then he puts it in there, then he goes down again, gets into that huge room where that one machinery is standing on the left. Great. And then he produces that thing, and then he goes to another room. It doesn't make sense.
It's a lot of
I think-
walking and backtracking. I get what you're saying. Like, go to this room, go to that room. You could fit all these machines. Like, if you're looking at it from a practical standpoint, and like you said, it is a video game. However, you do, I think, especially now in modern video games, try to make things where they reasonably make sense within the fiction. And yeah, it's like they must really love their cardio, because it's like you got to put this over here, then climb over here, then walk to this other side of the factory. So.
And I wouldn't care if I wouldn't have to do it myself as Garrett.
I
Yeah,
think
if it was just background, like you wouldn't
I think-
care, but because you have to gameplay it. Sorry, Seth, go ahead.
it's all good. I think you guys are thinking about this the wrong way, right? The builder doesn't value efficiency. The builder values labor. And so by putting the machines in different wings in different places, we're actually increasing the amount of productive labor that we do, because not only are the servants building these beautiful well made devices, they're also working on their bodies, right? They're working on their temples.
Yeah, but in a stupid way. It doesn't make sense, and it's very artsy fartsy, gamey, blamey. How they did it. Of course, they needed something, and I want to say, I think that this mission, in comparison to the Maw, is not aesthetically and not from like the impression you get, but from as a final level, this works in my way better, in my opinion, because it feels bigger. Like the Maw is just like going down the path, and if you knew after a while that you can just run through the Maw like down until you are at the end, you didn't need to hide because of the monsters. They can follow you at certain points. But this, the tension here is way bigger, and you feel like, yes, I'm actually doing something I'm improvising things. I'm figuring things out in the level, how to beat Karis, and I feel more clever because I craft these things and stuff. But I don't know. It lacks a bit, and I think some things wouldn't be necessary, in my opinion, especially with that awful item menu. Of course, you have in Thief. It's so tedious. It is so annoying. And I wanted to ask guys, how do you use the items menu?
I have
if you
my
want to call it
inventory-
menu,
Yeah.
the interface.
the
I have-
interface, yeah.
I have my inventory buttons bound to my mouse, so I have a left and right arrow on the left side of my mouse, and I click them to go through my inventory.
Yes, we discussed that once. I remember.
Yeah, it's pretty efficient and useful, and I also have my quick save button bound to my middle mouse, so I can kind of like play without having to take my hand off the mouse, which is immersive for me. But I definitely ended up getting towards the second half of Soulforge and just dropping all the pieces I didn't need because it's so tedious to go through it, and
did the same thing.
Yeah, it's like the non-essential components are such a drag on your time sorting through your inventory.
Yeah, I don't need 20 flares and bat and 30 baton nodes after I've made everything I'm gonna need. The first part of the mission's over, and then part 2 starts. So yeah, I scroll through my inventory, but I do agree that that is one of the things. This mission by far, I would say, is the most involved in terms of going through inventory, right? Because most of the time, you can hotkey your arrows to the number keys or whatever. But for things you usually need flash bombs, lock picks, maybe stuff like that. But this mission puts the rather, I know you said interface in quotes, yeah, interface to the test, because you're scrolling through constantly to find all these different pieces and then throw them into the machine and then pray to God, pray to the builder that it works. And so, but I want to say,
believer. You become a believer that it works. Genius, Karis.
Yeah, you're finally, I made this node that I needed to attach to this other thing. I believe in the builder now. But
your belief was smelted at Soulforge.
Yes, exactly. Soulforge is where I was converted to be a mechanist or a hammerite. But I was gonna say something to go back to what you said earlier, Alex, which I thought was interesting. Was I often do think about this mission in comparison to the Maw, and I think the Maw is good, thematically, story wise. I feel like it's cool. It's cool conceptually, going into this, where the trickster is and having a showdown with him.
Where all these supernatural things come out. This is actually really cool that they walk up this path, you go down this path, and the theme is really amazing. That's still very very great, yeah.
Exactly, but it's not really a good test of your skills in terms of what you've learned as a stealth player. But this mission, which I think is what you were alluding to, Alex, Soulforge, while has a lot of flaws, which we've discussed and we'll probably discuss more, it's a better test, as you said, because you make the various items and you go through the challenge rooms. This is a test of your stealth skills, and it's gameplay wise, it's more satisfying. Whereas I feel like the Maw is more satisfying thematically and conceptually. It's a very good story ending to the game, and with all the things like you said, with you're going one way, they're going the other, out the Maw. So
I think
And also the maw at the end is very annoying, because you do one thing and you have to wait, I think, 5 minutes or something until he finishes his ritual. And I think this they solved this better here. But yeah, on the other hand, there are many annoying things where you have to do things and they are still annoying, So I don't know what's better, but I think, Looking Glass, credits to them, but I think final missions aren't their strength.
It seems to be the case. With the Maw, I found I was. You mentioned being able to go from one end to the other very quickly if you know what you're doing. I realized very quickly that it was a linear mission, so I started speed running it and just like bunny hopping. And I found that in Thief 2, so as a layer onto what Jake was saying, in Thief 2 you don't have that speed multiplier when you jump, which means you're slower. And there are sections of Soulforge that you can't circumvent on expert, right? You have to change. Yeah, I believe you have to switch over all 8 towers, and you are forced to test your stealth skills. There's no way to get through those sections without actually playing the game the way it's intended, which is a bit of a twist because Thief is usually very good at offering you alternate paths to just avoid things outright, So I think in that way, like, hats off to Soulforge for actually enforcing its gameplay requirements on the player. I'm not the player who always wants to play by the rules. I want a bunny hop, right?
Yep. And also, I think, like with this, item system, I want to call it, you maybe want to ghost it, and it is already very challenging. But then this menu thing takes you so much time, and sometimes you just have like several seconds like to do something, so do not to be seen. And this, stands in its way. I don't think that they made a good use of their systems, in certain ways. I think that the game has other strength, not items.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, the strength of the game is we've talked about on previous shows. It's the stealth gameplay, the light and shadows, the sound propagation system, and the for its time fairly good AI. But yeah, I mean, I think it definitely you're stretching the game. I think at this point to its like mechanical limits without a sequel or an engine update or something of that nature that would warrant it. So.
But I think, we were criticizing it a lot. On the other hand, you are constantly joined by Karath. It's always at the trigger point. I think there are trigger points where then it starts where he brabbles through the microphone. And I really like what they did here. I think this is the strength of Looking Glass, telling a story and um, how he changes or what he, there are little details like, where you could really look into his mind and Soulforge. Soulforge. And what I like the best part is when he says like something, hey, yeah, and I got a vision, and the builder showed me what to do, blah blah blah. And at the end, then he says like, praise Karath, and the builder. Um, like where you can see like, okay, this guy, sees himself bigger than the builder. Or thinks he is the builder, and this is so great, this little thing, just an audio thing that plays in the background, but it tells you so much about the main villain, and you didn't have personal contact with him by this time, which is great.
Yeah, and it still manages, even though it's like one-sided and he's talking to you, it still manages to feel occasionally like he's reacting to something you're doing, because I don't actually know if the playback is randomized, but like it does sometimes feel like he picks up on you being in a certain area and then he says something to you and you're like, damn, he really do be watching that guy.
There's one thing when I was for the first time, a camera has seen me, and then he's saying something like, "What? You're still there? Like you're still alive?" That was
Yeah,
really cool.
that is really cool. Yeah, there's a lot of good reactivity. I think a lot of this level has a lot of the great like Hammerite quotes that I think you were saying, Alex, like from Karis, like he drops a couple verses, how evil is felled when righteous holds the mace or whatever. And there's a bunch of good lines, and no, I definitely agree. Like this, having that interaction with him, because obviously, like, with the trickster and the maw and stuff like that, you just kind of you mess up his stuff, and then you kind of just like sit in the corner and kind of wait for him to check your watch and wait for him to be done. But with this, there's constant exposition, there's constant story.
And where he explains that he built the eye, that he created the eye you are wearing, which is ironic. I was wondering, is it this the first time that we get to know about it? I wasn't sure. I think that we had a readable or something like that before, where we already could figure it out, or in a mission before.
I think I want to say that there's some
Eckmeyer?
hint to it. Yeah, he would know.
Eckmeyer, this is your part now.
Yes. Oh, Steve Clark in the chat says, "Do you have to use all the ingredients in the mission?" No, you don't. To beat the mission, there's plenty of leftover ingredients for various items. Now you do. I think they give you even some extra for the mission mandatory items, but no, you don't. You get way more stuff in the supply rooms than you have to use.
Yeah, I think they give you extras just in case you toss one somewhere and forget where it is.
Yeah,
it's just like an extra contact
clips through the machine. It doesn't work.
Yeah. Oh no!
And they and what did they think, that this whole mechanic is so fun for the player that they're like, oh, and now I start crafting scouting orbs and mines and stuff because hey, why not? I can do it way.
Yeah, it's so not like fun. This is not like this is the last mission. I'll definitely carry all this equipment over to my next mission.
Yeah, you can run out of it, but still, it's like, is it worth it? It's I don't know. It's and you if you could like create water arrows, that would be amazing. But I think that's not possible.
No, you're really limited on water arrows since you're mostly fighting machines, and their water arrows are pretty OP in that scenario.
Yeah, but mines and stuff, oh yeah,
well, those
you
are
could
good
use
too.
it, but I don't know. It's very, very strange.
I always make mines, like what you're saying, Alex. Like I can't make, like if I were to make scouting orbs and flares, like I literally the mission would be like 4 hours long. So I just make mines, which still adds a significant amount of playtime to go up to the machine to get the to make the parts that you need, like the frame and the bulb or whatever, and then to put them together. But I think mines are the most useful item that you can craft. You can make 7 or 8 of them, I think.
So I think 2, 3 scouting orbs are fine. I think 2 is enough. Yeah. Sometimes they are helpful actually in this level. I think like when you can hear, okay, there's a metal beast standing somewhere, but you don't know which way it's facing. Then you can check that out, for example. And this is the first mission, and of course it's because of the numbers of enemies. But here the enemies, especially the big ones, they feel intimidating and dangerous.
Yeah, because they're accommodated by the architecture in this level, right? Like it's specifically built around them.
Yep, actually, and yeah, don't they come out of walls also? Like
yeah, there are areas where if the camera gets alerted, it opens a steel door and then they flood the room. It's horrifying.
I was never really sure, like, because I never saw like a door, like one of those gates opening. But I recognized like, oh, now there are more. But did they come out of another room? Because as you said, like here they can actually reach mostly every room, as at least at the same level. Yeah, I think this was and I think it's the first time where you meet the spider bots, if I'm correct.
The little, the ones with like the saw blades or whatever they are that come out of them.
Yeah,
with the children's head. And the spider, the child of Kara's head and the child head. It's very confusing.
Wasn't there one of those in Life of the Party though? I thought there was one in the mansion there.
I'm not sure.
That's an Eckmeyer question. Oh, and speaking of which, he answered us. Other than the schematics and eye fluid, there's no indication that Karis himself made/gave the mech eye to Garrett. I'm assuming that he means pre-Sabotage. Soulforge.
Mm.
So we were right, because I think I'm very confused sometimes by with fan missions and stuff, because it is mentioned at other
Oh, I
parts.
know.
So you're never like, oh, was it in an original mission or not?
Yeah, all this
But
lore kind of gets jumbled all together.
yeah, and so let's do like the pros and cons. What did you guys like about this mission?
I like that it is aesthetically different than some of the other missions. Like the neoclassical style is really cool. There's some cool rooms. There's some fun design language with the vines. I love and hate that it forced me to play the game the way that you're supposed to play the game, mostly because I don't like to be pigeonholed. But I will say that as far as like a design, from a design standpoint, it's really good that way. I didn't like how unfinished it felt. I didn't like how tedious it felt to navigate. And the number of objectives you have to complete began to feel tedious after a while, so I wish that there was a little more agency around deciding how many or how much of these things are going to do. It's just kind of boring to be like, okay, go to 5 of 8 towers and flip switches, even if the challenges leading up to the tower is interesting.
Even worse on expert, because expert you have to do 7 of 8. So I think you can only skip like 1, I believe.
Good lord.
Yeah, that's oh, sorry, go ahead, Alex.
What did you? So I played on normal because I was forced by you. So Seth, you played on expert, and Jake, what did you play?
No, I played on
did
normal.
expert.
I have attempted it on expert before, though.
I did this
Okay.
mission on expert, and I did it without saving, which I think I did. I put on YouTube one time, and
Oh
it
my
was
God.
like, yeah, it was like incredibly. It was ridiculous. And you want to talk about Alex? You mentioned the tension earlier, and that being one of the strengths. Like in general, like playing without saving creates so much tension, and in this mission, it's like sweaty palms and like you're shaking because it's like if you don't save in this mission, you're potentially going back 2 hours, which is
You're a
keyboard
monster.
snapping. Yeah, I don't do that every time.
Do you remember how much time it took you?
I can find out, but I think it was about an hour and a half. I want to say off the top of my head, but I can find out.
Just only that? We are looking at Clitremus gameplay right now.
Maybe I'm wrong.
Is like, yes, of course he's. You didn't ghost.
I did not ghost.
Okay,
yes.
okay, but yeah, Clitremus took him
no
like
dying,
3 hours.
no dying,
plus.
but I didn't ghost.
Okay, but still, that's very impressive without saving. Clitremus does this, but he's saving a lot. So, yeah. So I don't know what's worse.
Hour. It's on YouTube, and I can eventually share it somewhere. But it took me an hour and 5 minutes, no saves, and which would obviously mean no deaths. So it took me an hour and 5 minutes. But yes, I did not ghost.
But did you run around and create chaos? Like, how often have you been spotted? Because that was my approach at the end, just running around, jumping over bombs and stuff, and not caring.
Yep, that's what I think I did from what I remember. I think I was just like, I'm just going to let this play out because I can't save, so I'm just going to roll with this as much as possible. Of course, like, I played cautiously to some extent because I'm like, I don't want to, I don't want to lose this. But yeah, I think by the end, I'm pretty sure I can't remember, but I'm pretty sure I had like no health and nothing, no items, and I'm just like, I'm a like hobbled, injured Garrett, just trying to get to that last like switch to flip it and just end this. So, but yeah.
By the way, no spider bots before Soulforge. Our friend Eggmeyer told us. As always, it's a pleasure, Eggmeyer, to have you here. So we don't talk so much shit. Before he was an unofficial part of our crew, we always discussed shit, and we're like, oh yeah, I think it was like that, and I'm pretty sure there was so many mistakes. And now we can do like, oh, did you guys remember if it was like that or that? And then you just like talk around it, like until he answers it. It's like, look at that.
Inside at last, fact checkers have confirmed that.
Yeah,
like it is great. I'm appreciative of that because like some of this stuff, like Eckmeyer like knows, like this stuff isn't even on like the wiki, really. Like some of it is not on there.
Thief GPT, thank you.
Yes.
So yeah, so Seth, did you talk about your cons?
Yeah, I did.
Yes, you did. But But now, Jake. Now I think it's we jumped on that, and then so Jake,
Sure.
go on with your pros and cons.
So I
Quick
think
pros
the
and cons
pros.
before the builder.
Yes, so I think the pros are what one of them that you said earlier, Alex. I like the interactions with Karis and on the loudspeaker. The lore really good. I think I do like some of the architecture, like you guys said, like the furnace room's really cool. In terms of gameplay, some of the challenge rooms are really strong. I liked the format of having basically a stealth gauntlet because I think it's really hard. I mean, you mentioned, I think it was you, Alex, that mentioned earlier about the Looking Glass games like never have like the best endings. I think it's just because their gameplay is so open and is not always action driven. It's really hard to make like a finale, I think, to like a game that isn't like an action game. So I think the format of these challenge rooms that are stealth focused and there's a nice variation between them, I think too.
You are actually very correct. Like, I would give them that. Like that, the whole mechanic, yeah, it isn't made for an intense thing. So I think they tried. Like, okay, what can we do? Okay, you can prep something, and then you activate certain things. Yeah, I give them that. Yeah, you're very
Yeah,
good observation.
oh, thanks. Yeah, that's what I think of because it's like this gameplay is very slow burning. It's not, you don't have a rocket launcher and all that stuff. I think everybody gets my point. So I did like that. I thought that was a creative way to have a finale. And my cons are I think it's too big. I think the crafting the items is too tedious. I almost think, and this is another thing, but I almost think you could split this in two. But then again, also at the same time, I feel like there's not a really good place to split this in two because then you'd have one half that's all of the build up and one half that's all the action. So it's just very oddly paced and very tedious at times. But yeah, those are kind of my pros and cons. Number one pro, probably, I did like the formatting of the different challenge rooms, some of which were very, very excellent. Little mini stealth challenges.
Yeah. I would disagree with the splitting it thing. I don't see it. I think this is actually one of the pros for me. Like that, it really feels important, very big, and as I said at the beginning, it is not what I would expect it to be, like the Karis headquarter, but it's still like it tells you, okay, this is like a really huge thing, like yeah, the main residence of Karis where he is with all his machinery. And what I actually really liked is that now even the mechanist humans, at the first time when you don't know, you're sitting somewhere and then you hear this like, oh, help me, like this whispering thing that normally the servants do, the mechanist servants do. But now those are like mechanist soldiers, but they have been changed, Soulforge. So that is really interesting, and that's something I didn't get. Are they still beggars, or are those mechanists that sacrifice themselves to become one of these mindless things? Because I
I
I,
would.
I, I don't think that Karis would pick up beggars from the streets to create mechanists.
I wonder. I don't know if it's ever confirmed. I know someone who does know.
No, wait, may I add? I wanted to add something. And if they are mechanists that sacrifice themselves, like, I think it's very interesting that they now always say, like, please, help me. I don't want to be that form. So how awful is it to be in that thing? How much of a mind do they have? That's yeah. But yeah, please let me know your thoughts.
I think that if I remember correctly, the minds of the servants slash robomechanists are fully intact. It just the mask and the procedure to convert them controls their nervous system but not their mind, and I'm pretty sure that they can still feel everything, so they are like in immense pain 100% of the time as well, if I remember correctly.
Yeah, I also could imagine, and it would, actually add to the brutality of Karis. Like he doesn't care, about human flesh or souls or whatever. It's just like it works. It works for his purposes, and the rest he doesn't care. He's an evil genius, but then I think it's even more interesting. Like, okay, if those mechanists sacrifice themselves, like they stood in line to be, let's say, masked by Karath, and now they are in this situation, and now they suffer. Like this must be such a, it's so ironic and interesting, and yeah, I think it's a really really great choice that they, I think it was easy, like just you have to just add the mask to a mechanist character and give them the voice of a servant, but the effect is great. And so I was very surprised. I remember that from back in the years, like you hear them and now you expect that there is a servant coming around, and suddenly you're facing a mechanist that can hurt you. And yeah, I think it's a great idea and choice what they did there.
Here's my read on the whole thing about the servants was I kind of felt like they are sort of criminals or beggars, and they're kind of unwilling servants, because I think you pointed this out earlier, Alex, with the whole idea of Karras's rhetoric is getting more extreme, like he's putting himself on the level of the builder now. And I always felt like he gets more radical, I feel like, as the game goes on. Like he starts off and he's saying, well, the mechanists are kind of a continuation. They're orthodox kind of Hammerites, and then I feel like by the end of the game, with the kind of verses and the things that Karath is saying, he's putting himself above the builder, and I feel like as like he gets more radical, I feel like my read on this is like he's losing like willing servants because he's growing more and more extreme. They're getting further and further away from their original religion or their original ideology, and they're morphing into something that's new and obviously quite grotesque based on his plans and his actions. That was my read on it, was that they're all kind of slaves. So, but I don't know if there's any official lore that says that or not, but that was just my read on it. But
yeah, it's I see some to the whole thing, to the mechanist. Do you see like similarities to like Scientology stuff?
I think there's definitely like it's a probably not specifically like maybe one thing, but I think it's kind of like an allegory of just like how different beliefs kind of can mutate and morph, and maybe something along those lines. New religions, maybe new sects of old religions, and kind of how Karath kind of starts this sort of continuation. It's the continuation of sort of the Hammerite beliefs, but in some ways like more extreme and also obviously different. But I was going to say too, reading the chat, Joe Flood says, I always thought the servants were beggars. And then Eckmeyer says, the servants are beggars, homeless, and thieves. He says they're all animated corpses. So they're all dead? That's interesting.
Yeah, I don't think that they are corpses. As we said they seem to have a mind, because otherwise they wouldn't beg for help.
Yeah.
And
It's almost
but
like
that still doesn't answer if the Hammerites that are walking around in this level are beggars or Hammerites that sacrificed themselves or were forced to join this form of life.
yeah. I always read too, if you go back to what is it, eavesdropping, when he's displaying the technology for Chort, I think he puts the mask on like a homeless person, I believe. So the first person that you see that is wearing one of the masks and with the rust gas, I think is not a willing participant. I think they are.
No, they
being-
aren't. That's,
Yeah.
But those are servants.
Yeah, but I'm just
But-
saying, like, yeah,
But they're not mechanists, they are not like with a weapon in the hand.
yeah,
So
exactly.
that's I know that there's one readable where he says like, where Karath tells him like to get more beggars and whatnot to the facility. But it's like, does he make a difference? Like, obviously he wants all of the everybody besides him to be in that form. I think that is his huge goal, or dead. And
Yeah.
but is he like making a difference? Like, okay, a servant should be a beggar, and a mechanist maybe should be a believer, or a former believer at this point. Like that's the question. Like, and if he divides that, do the mechanists sacrifice themselves, or are they forced to or tricked into that?
It's also interesting because you don't really know how many mechanists, like willing mechanists, that there are, because they kind of hint. Like I think it's shipping and receiving, where there's the Hammerite and he's talking to the one civilian, and they're talking about how like more and more people, more and more Hammerites are joining the mechanists, but like you're never quite sure like what proportion of mechanists like or former Hammerites became mechanists. You know what I mean? Is it like 50%? Is it 80%? Is it a small minority? So I don't know if there's ever like an explicit like discussion of like, oh yeah, like 80% of the people used to be Hammerites, like they're now mechanists, or is it just like a small insurgency, so to speak, of people? So it's interesting. So interesting to think about.
The workshop where they are created has the pit of death and the corpse on the counter. I know in eavesdropping. I'm just reading Agma's comment. The beggar has no mask. A masked servant stands next to her and breathes on her. Yeah, but it doesn't make sense. Or is their mind like partly
Maybe,
reactivated somehow or not?
yeah, that would be my assumption. My assumption would be for the body to be animated, there has to be at least partial reactivation of the mind or brain. So maybe that's the part of them that's like crying out for help, the part that's still human.
But then they aren't able to create machines where you don't have to constantly change rooms, but they have this genius technology.
Immortality, yeah, practically bring somebody back to life. But
And what I always wonder is like, Karath doesn't change himself to a certain life form. So, like, what is his thinking? Like, he knows how idiotic it is, or what a horrible existence they have, or like, does he? Yeah, he thinks of himself that he's this genius, which he is, of course, but evil. So he cannot change into this lower life form, or whatever he sees in that.
that'd be interesting. I was gonna say that's you actually just I just thought something interesting based on what you just said, Alex. Like you think like there's almost like there'd be like some alternate scenario where Karis is like, I transferred my mind into a robot, like a servant or something. I mean, honestly, because he talks about how much he hates the natural world. I mean, obviously his plan is to basically eliminate the natural world. So you would think that he'd be disgusted with his body of flesh and want
Right.
to put himself into like a robot or something. I mean, it makes sense in terms of his ideology that would be a logical next step to make. But
I think in one episode I already said that he would actually need to be like Crank from the Turtles. Like just his
That's good.
brain in a mechanic body. That would actually work for him. Even though a brain, or maybe if he, if Garrett wouldn't interrupt him all the time, maybe he could have made a machine that like out of redstone, from Minecraft, that is actually capable, like an artificial intelligence.
Yeah, it's funny too because he sounds a little bit like Krang, at least from the '80s turtle cartoon, with that kind of
yeah,
like
that's true.
I made myself a mechanic robot. Seth can do it pretty well, but you know what I mean. So, but yeah, it's interesting, like to think about.
Don't make him do it.
Don't encourage him.
No, yeah, but yeah, interesting. It's interesting they didn't go. I feel like if this was a game from a modern studio, say, I feel like the final part of the level would be Karis has put himself in a giant death robot, and Garrett gets like a super weapon and has to like blow up the robot. But he's just Karis is in his little bunker thing, his little
Return
room.
to Castle Soulforge Stein.
Yes, exactly. Just like Wolfenstein.
Teenage Mutant Mechanist. Teenage Mutant Mechanist. So at this point, I want to say greetings to Downwinder, because he said, after decades of fan missions, not sure why OMs are a talking point. Besides the lore, the levels themselves are no match to fan missions. My view is get back to fan missions with authors I think there's still a lot to discuss about original missions. So,
Yeah, there's lore, there's story.
just one
I mean,
didn't want to ignore his comment. Um,
yeah,
yeah,
I think.
my pros and cons.
Oh
I
yeah,
think we discussed most of it already. I think, yeah, as I said, like I think they tried a lot. I can see what they were trying to do, but I think most of it doesn't really work to a very um great feeling, of gameplay, and it's very tedious. It becomes very tedious, and I don't know if the more at the end was better.
yeah. It's definitely. I think it's a good. It's an interesting. It's an interesting debate. I think
Of course,
they contrast
that's
very
why
well.
we're doing it 20 years plus after the release. And that's what I so much like, because as we always say, like, they there are so many loose ends, because they didn't answer everything, and that is the great thing for fan missions and stuff. That's why it's still working today, I think.
Absolutely.
So should we jump into the comments?
Yeah.
Because
Ready
I
when you
have
are.
one from Ingroove on YouTube. He said, to my surprise, this is one of my favorite Thief missions of all time. One thing first person shooters often do that Thief never really did was create the feeling that you're really being worn down, having to scrap for every arrow, health potion, water arrow, every new path, every objective. In Sabotage, it's truly taxing and exhausting task to save the world. Every room is like, whoa, how can I possibly keep going? Stealth games usually lean on the comfort of stealth and sticking to safety. This level forces you to use all tactics, and you are uncomfortable and nervous and sweating. There's no comfort in Soulforge. I understand why they want Karath sealed off, but I would have preferred to have the final objective be right near him so you can watch him suffocate before. You escape, maybe Garrett finds a protective gas mask so he can watch as Karath goes down. Yeah, that's actually a great point. First of all, I like that it's one of his favorite missions of all time, which is interesting. But the last part is actually, yes, you get a great cutscene, of course, at the end, but to stand right next to him or to watch him, from a secure, chamber or whatnot, uh, is would have been actually very satisfying. I totally agree.
I think an easy way to do that would be to have had some kind of special hermetic chamber for Karis, and Garrett just gets into it before Karis manages to. So,
Or you
and
can watch him through a camera or something.
yeah, even that. Funny that it was somebody's favorite mission. That's the part that's sticking for me because it's
Such
not
a
my
freak.
favorite.
Such a freak. No, but that's the thing, where you can see, like, so many players like different approaches, and but he's totally true. It's like this is like really a stressful mission.
Mm. I
And I
actually,
think that no matter how you play it, if you really ghost it, it is very, nail biting. But
mm,
if you're like running around like, I don't care, alarm, 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 bombs, bombs, bombs. This is also, because there are bombs flying everywhere in certain places. Like, so no matter what approach you're looking for or you're using, it is also very intense. That's a big plus of this mission.
yeah, I would agree. The part of this that I disagree with is that I actually didn't feel like I was hurting for equipment. I felt like the thing that I wanted more of was speed potions because I wanted to get it over with.
Yep, I agree. Speed potions and water arrows. You guys still there?
Oh yeah, no, I did nothing to add. Just I agree with you what you said though. It's interesting, even though this isn't my favorite mission. It's still interesting to hear different opinions and takes. Obviously, none of them are wrong. I mean, I think I might raise an eyebrow at some of them. If you said that the courier mission was your favorite, I probably would raise an eyebrow. But yeah, it's good to see different points of view.
So, Plutonia, one of our show's friends, friend Plutonia, also on YouTube, said, I like the gameplay aspect of Soulforge that it's an endurance round of all the mechanics that the game has taught so far, with a heavy emphasis on actual stealth, because you simply don't have the resources to deal with every threat in other ways. You can craft them. Being able to choose which signal towers you activate also makes the mission more replayable. The long elevator rides to the roof seem totally pointless, though. Some might argue that it's a nice break, but I just feel like it's a boring wait. I totally agree. Aesthetically, it feels like the cathedral is being transformed into something that's not suitable for human use at all, which makes sense. I also like the steam powered exoskeleton that Karis is wearing. It's like a brass spider latched onto his back, grabbing onto his limbs. Also, if you haven't noticed so far, the main menu graphic for Thief 2 is basically one of the giant bronze machines in Soulforge. Yep, um, we already talked about that. But yeah, those elevator rides are really annoying.
I found so the thing that bothers me about the elevators isn't that they're a long ride. It's that you have to call so many of them down before you ride them up.
Mm-hmm.
And they have these elevators that you have to call at the end of a gauntlet. So you have this like super stressful thing that you're running, and if you're being shot at with bombs, the point at which you most commonly die is waiting for the elevator to come down. And that
There-
feels like you're just being punished. I'm like, why are you punishing me when I did the thing you wanted me to do? Like, just have the elevator waiting and have it take me up, you know? I don't mind
there
the
is
wait.
there's that one room, there's like, I think in the middle there is like a lava uh, lake,
Yep.
and I think you have to jump over, or there's a little bridge, and I think there are like two or three um big robots, and there's cameras and cannons, and
That's definitely a
uh,
gauntlet.
and then you go up, then you activate one of the beacons, and then you have to go down, and that like the thing is, okay, I did one more, one on the checklist, one beacons down or up or whatever. So now I have to go down this long elevator, and I know what to expect. Like, I have to go back through this room, and this elevator is like, just imagine like a typical elevator music, and but
Mm,
you're inside like, oh, I know what I have to do now. Please let me start this. You know, it's yeah, but yeah, how should they? You know, I think there's an architectural reason for that. Maybe, I don't know.
I don't know. I think that the ride up, if the elevator was already waiting, is fine. That's your ramp off for the action. And the descent back to ground level is fine. That's a ramp back onto the action. It's just like adding that extra weight at the beginning where you're calling the elevator down is the thing that sends me. That's the bit that pisses me off.
Yeah, and what I did sometimes is like, okay, they recognized me anyway, so you click that, and then you run around in circles through that room until the elevator is there. So, in the hopes of that none of the bombs or whatever will get you. Um, yeah, that's very tedious. But maybe they were like, hey, what could we also add that's annoying to do? um,
Let's artificially inflate the playtime.
yep.
Oh, we
Uh,
have some YouTube comments or some comments in the chat
oh, yeah.
regarding the talk of the souls and the mass earlier. Eckmeyer, aka Thief GPT, says the precursor mass traps the soul in a sense. Son of Frankenstein was an influence. I believe in that film there is body swapping or soul swapping with Igor and the monster and stuff of that nature. I didn't know that was influence, though. That's interesting.
I didn't know that either.
I know the movie, but I don't remember it.
And there's a comment in German I think I can't read. I know I can't read it, but I think it's in German. I'm not
Yeah,
100% sure.
Jay Speaver, he asked like, wann wirst du Stephen Russell noch einmal befragen? So it translates to, when will you talk to Stephen or interview Stephen Russell again? Never, I believe, because like there is no reason for that. I think
The ship
because
It's
has
hard to
sailed.
mine. It's hard to mine more out of Thief specifically with Steven, I think, right? Because
exactly.
yeah, I think it's like we kind of covered. You guys kind of covered all the ground I think there was to cover, unless something big happens, which Not that we know, or it will.
The only thing I could see is like back in the days, I think this episode with Steven gave us a lot of new listeners, so the numbers went up really high. And then we had Daniel Tron in the same year. So yeah, this was like a huge year for gaining subscribers and stuff. So maybe there are more people now that would actually recognize like, oh, hey, please send us your questions. Back in the days, it was mostly TTLG. But I still think that the most interesting questions have already been asked. Like it was very detailed, and about everything. Like how was it to work with Looking Glass, and how did that happen, and this. So everything thief related, which is actually the podcast about, is discussed with Steven. So I'm sorry, but there won't be, and I think I will leave that man alone.
Yeah. And I think, we don't do this. I mean, maybe it would gain us more listeners, but we don't do this for listeners. We do this for the passion and the love of Thief, of course.
We do it because we like listening to ourselves.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes.
Alex loves editing us so much when bad things happen, when technical difficulties.
Actually, I don't remember anything really. It's mostly when something bad happens, like that I forget to invite the bots or any. It's like on my end mostly. But it's because
perfect.
I have to do everything.
True.
Yep.
All that extra labor, the builder is pleased.
Yeah, I am the Karis of this. Then there's a comment by a certain YouTube channel called Honest Tries, which is Randy Teffer, Random Teffer. Sorry, this happens all the time. But go see his channel, Honest Tries, where he cooks strange recipes from the internet, and it's sometimes very disgusting. Can I read it in his voice, or you know what, Seth? Give it a try. You can do it.
Can do. I can't do the voice, but I will read the comment. So, Honest Tries says, Soulforge has, I think, the strongest thematic and dramatic underpinnings of all the original Thief missions. The cathedral is now a foretaste of Karath's planned hell on Earth, entirely stone and metal without a single living plant or creature or human in it except for Karath himself. The only movement is from the machines and the robots, and what remains of his followers after murdering and servantifying them. New verb, servantifying. Then Victoria arrives, trying to sabotage the machines with plant growth, aware that it's probably hopeless, but doing it anyway because there's no time left and no other options. Karath must be fought, even if it's a fool's errand. Then Garrett, having rejected Victoria's plan as doomed and suicidal, and indeed it is, turns up at last, whether out of shame at his cowardice or an infatuation with Victoria, and it's never quite resolved. But he turns up too late, only in time to see Victoria's failure and her desperate self-immolation that sends vines threading throughout the halls and ducts of the cathedral. Still too little too late, even Victoria was not plant enough. How can a victory possibly be wrought out of this? Only by using Karath's own tools against him, even as Karath berates you for being a man of destruction, not construction. That's a quote that I thought was really fun. You are constructing the guiding beacon that will draw back the servants using Karath's own blueprints and the same machines that built all of these robots. It's an absolutely fantastic mission concept, and the first half of it is really good. Far more robots than you've ever encountered before, more than you can dispatch with water arrows or even mines. You're never forced to ghost. You really have to lean on stealth and avoidance as you locate the plans, the parts, the several machines that you need to make the beacon, and then you have to slot it in, switch it on. And now, the bad half of the mission starts. You can leave the cathedral proper, and you have to navigate a set of arbitrarily arranged, highly video gamey gauntlets to reach the signal towers. There's a lot of fun to be had in these spaces, and I'm especially fond of the turret room, but the momentum of the narrative has dissipated. The areas feel like abstract challenges with no real connection or meaning, and you've probably been in this mission for 2 hours already, and it just goes on and on. It doesn't entirely replace your triumph with tedium, but it sure tries. But at least the ending cutscene is really awesome. Yeah, this basically mirrors my thoughts on the level. It's got a great intro, great setup. Parts of it are beautiful, parts of it are boring, but it definitely becomes tedious by the end.
yeah, it's too much of the things that could be great, but for its own good, it's not healthy enough at the end. And he writes, at least the ending cutscene is really awesome. Yeah, I think we don't need to discuss the cutscenes from both of the games. I think both ending sequences and most sequences are really awesome. But I
Yeah.
think so thank you, Rob, Randy, Random, Teffer, Honest Trice, whoever who he is. I think he basically brings it. It's a very concentrated opinion. I think many might have.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think
So
he touched on a lot of some of the big things that we touched on, and I'm in agreement that I think we discussed earlier. I think we were both on the same page. It's very strong thematically, and for some of the reasons he listed, using using your enemy's tools against them, very cool. Yeah, it's a good
and
comment, very well written.
and what he brought up, like what we ignored so far, is that, and I like that Garrett is not perfect, not the perfect hero. He never wants to be that, and yeah, for some Garrett reasons, he arrives too late, change of mind, maybe, whatever. And yes, his, I don't want to call friend, but his ally sacrificed herself. Yeah, and maybe if he would have acted earlier, maybe they could have figured out something else together. On the other hand, I think who knows what would happen, with Victoria was always a threat somehow. So um I think it's very interesting. He arrives too late. He's not the superhero that arrives right on time. No, he arrives too late and has to see what happened because of his absence or non-cooperative behavior.
Because he's
Yeah,
not a hero, he's an anti-hero.
yeah. I was gonna
Yeah,
say
right.
it goes back to that, and it's a good part of his, like, he has a good arc, I think, through the 3 games, and this is kind of a major part of it, right? Is he's always he's the reluctant hero, or the anti-hero, whatever you want to call it. And yeah, I mean, because what you said is true, like, objectively, like, if he would have went with her earlier, if they would have been more proactive in stopping Karis, then this never would have, he never would have almost blown up the world or whatever. So
Just imagine, like, the cutscene, like they both would arrive. You would see, like, some area in front of the church, and then suddenly they both, one from the left, one from the right, enter the gate, with a really cool Soulforge music playing in the back. um and yeah, I think I like how they did it, because yeah, it shows Garrett is not perfect, and that actually adds to his character. He's
yeah,
not
I think it
flawless.
goes. Yeah, it goes further. Not to discuss the third game, but it transitions well into the third game and his total character arc through the series. I mean, imagine if it would have been no fun if they would have teamed up to stop Karis, and he's building, like, he's laying down the first brick of Soulforge. He's still building the building, like, just getting it built, and they just go and kill him immediately. That wouldn't be very fun.
Yep. I'm just wondering, wait, that wasn't Random Teffer's comment. Is there a
Whose was
mistake?
it?
I think it was VFig, because I think Random Teffer, Honest Tries, answered us on YouTube, and this is a comment from the forums. So let me just. Oh no, and I deleted the video, so I cannot see the comment anymore. But I think that this is VFix.
Well,
Yep.
apologies for misattribution.
No, this is VFig. I'm so sorry. This was not Honest Tries Random Teffer's comment, but I cannot recreate it anymore. So, Random Teffer, I'm sorry for your opinion. That is not here anymore. There was some mistake in the document. Yeah, this happens.
And dissolved by the rust gas.
Yeah, actually, that is the problem. Have you been on the toilet already, Seth?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. Next time. How did that happen? I'm wondering. Strongest thematic? Yeah, it is him. That was a VFIC comment, the way I see it.
A document thing, maybe cop and paste and over thing. Those things happen. I lose stuff.
Somehow with the formattation, I think. But yeah, that's the thing. But Random Teffer, we can interview him about this mission one day. So thank you, Vfik, from the forums from that. And then, of course, there's the friend of our show, Delph Docs, and he posted a comment. Yeah, pretty long as well, but I think his opinion is always very interesting, and it has the word IKEA in it. So, Stealth Dogs, or the second best Alex I know. Sabotage at Soulforge is a labyrinthine horror story set in an IKEA factory. It introduces never before seen enemies and, of all things, a crafting system. We're stealing from the final boss while he stands in the heart of his infernal machine, and we start to turn his carefully wrought tools against him. I cannot emphasize enough how much I love this. For me, Soulforge is a perfect combination of both Thief 2's narrative and its design philosophy. I find it quite beautiful in a masochistic kind of way. Soulforge is a loud, unpleasant place to explore. Robotic foes stalk the hallway, factory floors, and corridors. Kara's most trusted followers, now converted into mindless slaves in bloody, hastily grafted masks, are truly pitiable. The game doesn't even mind if you kill them on higher difficulties. This in itself is a clear narrative beat. There's nothing and nobody within Soulforge's death that's worth saving. When he closes those doors in the final cutscene, Garrett wears the look of a man shutting a mausoleum. I can understand why players would get to this mission and not like it. It's an acquired taste for sure. A sharp 180-degree turn from the soft carpets and lustrous paneling of Gervasius' mansion, which we just spent a whole 2 missions skulking around in. For me, Soulforge is the source of so many memorable encounters, discoveries, and unique challenges that when I think of Thief 2, I always think of Sabotage at Soulforge alongside Trail of Blood, Life of the Party, and First City Bank and Trust. I don't know what Trail of Blood does in there, but hey, yeah, that's Stealth Dog's opinion. Thank you very much. That's a very positive approach on that. And I think he points it out that it's for certain people, not for everyone. And I don't know how I think about the change of pace, but what he says, and I think this puts it in a different light, that nobody is worth saving here. This is an awful place, obviously, and yeah, maybe this puts it in a different light, as I said. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean everybody's dead or corrupt like Karis. Especially if we go with the theory or the idea that the servants are dead and the master on them and stuff like that. So it's an interesting. I think his comment's interesting. It's like a mausoleum. I think that's a good metaphor. And he's also kind of closing the door and destroying this failed sect cult of the Hammerites, or spin-off of the Hammerites, and kind of destroying this ideology as well. So it's very Soulforge is like a mausoleum or like a graveyard of all these people and all of this technological madness that's going on.
It's a graveyard for my satisfaction as a player.
Yeah.
That cutscene at the end where we see Garrett shutting the doors, that shot of Garrett closing the doors also stuck in my mind because he does look especially grim. This made me think of the bit about there not being anyone worth saving. Made me think about the literature that's like scattered throughout the level. I actually found it kind of disappointing that there aren't more readables. And like I almost wish that there was some sort of little backstory that brings you into who these particular mechanists were before they got converted. In the bunk room, there's a readable that talks about one of the guys becoming a mechanist. He came over from the Hammerite Order, and he just thinks the mechanist uniforms are so much nicer. And then it finishes off at the end with this kind of funny punchline where he's like, also, I'm close to a lot of pubs where a lot of gentlemen go, and the gentlemen give me a lot nicer attention in my Mechanist uniform than they used to in my Hammerite uniform. And that was like such a funny little characterization. I'm like, so one of these guys, this guy's probably walking around in a mask now, which is unfortunate, but I don't know. I just wanted more. I don't think there's enough characterization in the level for me.
That's totally true. And the readables, I think, are a thing. Because what I didn't like, I know they have to do that so the player gets an idea of what to do. But the readables are presented to you like, here it is, hello, in the middle of this huge room is the blueprint and the explanation how to do it. And, next to every machinery, there's a very simple, to the point manual how it works. Mm, yeah, and as you said, like would want to, and that's actually a strength of the game, and what Looking Glass created. uh, I'm missing like the little stories behind everything, or the thoughts. Who are those people that are walking around and working or whatever here? Are they like his closest, best soldiers or whatever that are allowed to be here? Because there are not many. Or what's the thing? And yeah, I think that is a huge minus point of the mission, that this is missing.
I wonder if it would have, like, if there were plans to flesh it out more and they just didn't execute due to time and budget. I guess we'll never know, but
It couldn't be the lack of talent, that's for sure.
no.
So yeah, I think like, yeah, whatever it was, but yeah, they didn't have the time, they didn't have the money, blah 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 blah. But still, yeah, I think the readables that are there are like, aha, yeah, straight to your face, like, so it gives me also a taste of, they had an idea, but the execution is halfway,
Yeah,
down.
and the readables rarely connect to one another. Like, so many other missions have readables that like are pieces of a narrative puzzle, and in this one they all feel very isolated.
And I think a huge missed opportunity is also something where you maybe have an interaction with a servant, or yeah, a reforged person, um, that maybe that can give you some thoughts or how it feels. I think that would have been really interesting to hear, like, how does it feel to be a servant, or servantized, or how servantifying, as Vfig put it, that has been servantified. But how do they really feel? I think one of those insights would have been amazing.
Diary of a Caged Servant.
Yeah, something like that. Then, Jake, there was one other Plutonia comment from our Discord. Way down, I think it was.
Is it on the bottom?
It says Plutonia. It's pretty long. Otherwise, it says under forums. It is
Oh, okay. Is it the one that says starts with my?
my first time playing
That's the one.
Soulforge. Yeah.
Okay.
So there you go.
Yeah, sure. Platonia says, my first time playing Soulforge, I didn't really have much success like many other players. I'd gotten used to the ability to get rid of most of my threats in a level using the blackjack. It's just not feasible in Soulforge because you need water arrows to disable bots, so you have very limited resources. So I didn't realize at first, but Soulforge basically tests every skill you've been taught previously and forces you out of your comfort zone. You can no longer use something overpowered as a crutch such as the blackjack. You have to approach it differently. Maybe Case in the Joint had a point when it forced all players on all difficulties to never be detected? Question mark. Maybe it was a lesson in advance to prepare you for a mission where you simply can't get rid of every threat in the same way. And then he lists some criticisms. His first is there's no reason for the guiding beacon towers to have this long elevator rides, which I think we touched on a little bit earlier.
Oh, great point. We need to discuss that.
They serve no purpose for the gameplay. Since there's no threat, why couldn't the control rooms from the antenna be on the ground floor? Yeah, that's interesting.
Yeah,
I don't
because they
know.
have machineries on different floors for one purpose, so it's that's the logic there.
In the early
Yeah.
2000s, they had to show off that games had 3 dimensions.
Yeah, that's part of it too, maybe. Or yeah, it is kind of it's interesting.
You know, I think
Is
one thing that makes sense is those beacons need to be high up.
that's
You know,
true.
to
How would
send
they be seen? You
yeah,
know, they're
to send
beacons.
their signals and stuff. So this is the only thing I give it. You know, like beacons. Oh, of course, but then you can say the control can still be on the ground because the
Yeah.
technology
Yeah,
of
that's
the
true.
mechanism should make it possible. But yeah, no, you know, you don't know the technology behind it.
Yeah, exactly. And then he goes on with another criticism: the objective to not let Karis figure out what you're doing is broken, and you can never fail the mission, even if you show Karis your guiding beacon. That's true. I think I didn't even think of that until now, but that objective I think can't be failed. I think it can only be succeeded when you beat the mission. There's no way to fail it.
I
So,
feel like a
because you
great way to have done that would have just made it so that you fail if someone sees you operating the machinery.
right, because then you know, okay, I got to launch. Someone's messing with the beacons. I got to like launch this now, or
Yeah. Or that you have to disable the camera. He just like immediately gasses you if he sees you doing it.
Yeah, something like that. Like there is a certain threat to working on these things that, or yeah, maybe something if you need to put certain items or things into certain beacons, um so otherwise you get electrified or something.
because if you think about it, right, um, for that reason, because that makes sense, right? Not letting Karis know you're there because he knows his plan is at risk. But what does Karis think that you're doing there if he's not aware of your sabotage at the Soulforge? Like, what does he think that you're doing? Like, he can see that Garrett's there. Like, oh, I guess Garrett is just hanging out here. Like, what is he? What is he thinking that Garrett is doing if he's not sabotaging his plans? So
And
it is kind of silly.
what doesn't make sense is like he recognizes you, like when you're seen by a camera, what, you're still there. But
Yeah,
so he thought you're already dead, but wouldn't he have recognized that also? Like, you know, wouldn't he be notified or something like Garrett's dead now? On the
they
other
just
hand, there are just, you know, wouldn't he have so many cameras all over the place normally? Because
yeah,
he's
it's
sitting in his chamber and you know, he's not getting out of there. So he has to observe from his genius camera. So yeah, I think it's good that there aren't so many, but still, doesn't make sense.
yeah, it's kind of a strange. It's definitely possibly like a sign of something that was not finished to have an objective that is not failable, that you can only like succeed. Like it doesn't make any sense. But yes, that's a good. That was good for point that out, Platonia. I didn't forgot about that.
And one thing, you know, I think it's mentioned like the second or third time, like uh, the people have this impression, like, oh, okay, this mission is testing all your skills you learned throughout the game. I don't think that you learned, or you know, that you do not necessarily learn. I think Seth or Jake, you said it before, that in other missions you have, you know, several ways around, and yes, you have this here. It's to a certain degree as well, but you could choose your way, um, which translates into different play styles and stuff. But I don't think that this mission is like a summary of everything you learned, or not necessarily learned. It depends on how you played the missions before. And if you didn't play them in a certain way, then you are not really prepared for this. Um, I think because, you know, I was the guy who always shot water arrows at those beasts. So now I'm, you know, it's not working anymore. So I would have liked it like if you could create certain traps or something like that, you know, that kill these things, or like I you know, maybe you can lure them through like a, like fire or something where they get destroyed, or you can actually shoot, you know, with a cannon as well, you know, something like that, that gives you
Yeah,
a little chance to which would actually work with the theme, like that you kill them with their own weapons.
yeah,
um
that would be cool. That would be cool, and I think that's something. Not to go off in a different direction, but I think there's a little bit of that in Deadly Shadows because there's a furnace in Deadly Shadows where you can lure in Hammerites and then flip the switch. So that would have been cool. But yeah, like that's something I think they got to later, but it would have been cool in Thief 2, specifically in Soulforge, if you could, if there was like a smelting pot that you just like the one in Return to like in Thief 1, the Return to Haunted Cathedral, like where you smelt that icon. It'd be cool if you could do that, but you could pour it on like a robot and it like melts it or something like that. That'd be cool.
There's
Joe-
those rooms
Joe-
with the. Sorry, Alex. Go ahead.
No, go on. Mine is a different one.
There's those rooms with the lava pits in them and the bridges across, and the bridges are mobile. The first time I got into that room, I immediately thought of Alien 3, where they drop the alien into the forge and burn it to death.
Yeah.
And I tried to lure, like, way back when, the first time I played Thief 2, I tried to lure the robots out onto the bridge and then move the bridge to drop them into the lava, because it looks like that's what you're supposed to do. And I feel like that was a huge missed opportunity. Even just, like, using an elevator to do it, because I understand that there are limitations with the AI and like moving platforms, but like I'm pretty sure you can get them to walk onto elevators. So that would have been a great decision, I think, for this level.
A missed opportunity, but I think on the other hand, this would also have been hard to implement under the time and money circumstances. But still, that would have been great. Like that, yeah, you fight back with their own weapons. And Joe Flood on the chat just said that Karras thinks he's too smart to be foiled by Garrett's interference. He
That's
wants
true.
to clone. Yeah, actually, it's the arrogance, I believe. That makes sense.
Yeah, that's part of his character. No one can stop me in his delusions of grandeur. I was gonna say, to maybe finish up. That was some good to finish up Plutonia's comment. Yeah, he has the turret hall is another criticism. The turret hell room, he calls it, is the turrets are alerted by default even when nothing is seen. You enter the room. It's true. That's probably I think that's the toughest of all the rooms. I don't know what you guys think, but I hate the turret room. And if I'm playing on expert, that's definitely the one I'm going to use my skip on for sure.
I like the concept the best, but the execution leaves something to be desired. Yeah.
Yeah, I think when I did my expert run without dying, I think that was the room that I decided to skip, because when I've done that room, I usually die at least. That's a quick save room for me. I'm not skilled enough to get there through that without dying.
Yeah, I quick saved in there too.
Anything, Alex? You have anything?
No, I'm just reading the comment of Leon HFM. It was on our Discord, and he picked up on the topic like which we discussed earlier, that with the mechanists that are now wearing the masks. And I won't read out the whole comment, but I think he put it in nicer words than I did. Which makes him wonder, did Karras forcefully convert them into seemingly mindless servants against their will? Have they understood that they were just pawns in his greater plan? Would they have followed him this far if he hadn't converted them? Can they really be regarded as his faithful followers? This, on a side note, also reminded me of the mutants in System Shock 2, who, even though their minds are already remotely controlled, so to say, they still have some of their previous consciousness left, which, for example, makes them say things like, I'm sorry, when they attack you. I think that is very interesting, especially the last part, because another comment also mentioned like that for that person, it feels like more of a System Shock mission. And I would totally agree that the whole, all the enemies and, it's very similar. Like you have those big robots, like in System Shock 2. You have the servants that are, as he just described it, they have some, some leftovers of their mind, and they recognize that what is going on is not right. You have the cameras. Yeah, in System Shock, I think you could just smash them, which was nice. But I think the whole feeling is more of System Shock 2 than a Thief mission. I would kindly agree on that. A part of.
Yeah, that makes sense. I didn't see it that way until pointed out, but yeah, like there is those big robots in System Shock 2, and the many or whatever I believe they're
Yeah, the
called,
many.
and yeah, and they're very mindless, just like the servants in this mission. So obviously there was some overlap with, I think, maybe some personnel and also development time. They were in development, I think, around the same time. So
I haven't beat System Shock 2, but I also like now that you raise that, definitely feel the vibe that people are alluding to. It's there.
The constant pressure that Thief is not a game of constant pressure. Actually, you can sit in a corner and it's quieter and be safe. But yeah, System Shock is not like that actually. And yeah, I think I think this analogy works very well. It has a
Yeah.
lot of System Shock 2 vibes, or one. Yeah, basically similar.
Yeah, Thief doesn't have respawning enemies, and System Shock does. So System Shock, like you said, Alex, you're never quite safe because the enemies respawn and they also roam around the level a little bit more. Thief,
Yep.
you can kind of take care of all the enemies and chill if you want to.
And you don't have those taffin monkeys.
Yes.
I didn't like them.
They're small hitboxes, yes.
Yeah, and they are shooting, but I think in the first System Shock there were like enemies that were like really close to the ground, and with the controls in that game, they were pain in the taff to kill. I
Yes.
remember that.
There's little robots that are like basically little RC cars, and they like explode, and they're very hard to hit, and they're very annoying.
Yep. Eggmeyer. I know, Eggmeyer, you put a lot of stuff on our Discord channel, but it was like, not in one big comment, but this was there and now, so it was really hard to do. But one comment from Eggmeyer was on YouTube. The lore is rich, the cutscene's great, the objectives tedious, the map is massive. Thank you very much for that one.
Simply put, but
I mean,
agreed.
yeah, all entirely accurate.
So,
Yes.
but who wants to read a lot of Eggmeyer's or Eggmir's comments and thoughts? Join our Discord channel because he's very active there and puts a lot of interesting stuff in the wrong channels. No, and yeah, so there's more thief stuff to learn from him. Ridnar Tim. It's been a long time since I actually played it, but I remember this mission fondly. I love that it's huge and complicated. It really feels like it deserves to be a final mission, especially once you get past the fabrication stage and start placing the beacons. The level keeps surprising you with just how huge it is. It's a very positive way of thinking it.
Yeah.
Is it like surprising you? Oh, wow, it's even bigger. Hey, how cool is that? Yeah, opinions?
I think that it's actually a very flat level. Like, there's supposedly upper areas, but there aren't actually that many of them. Like, there's a couple of rooms you walk through that are especially tall, and those kind of feel like big, interesting places. And there's a whole bunch of interesting set piece rooms where you wander in and, like, you're clearly supposed to see the room from a certain perspective, and it looks cool, and there's a vista. But I don't think I was surprised by how big it was. I think I was annoyed by how far I had to walk, especially since I couldn't bunny hop anymore because it's Thief 2. I just wanted to bunny hop everywhere. So
Yep. Speed potions, bunny hops. This would have been a great Thief 1 level. I kind of, exchange the beasts with like supernatural things. Make the whole thing like the theme, like a crazy mansion or whatever, and it would work the same.
yeah, a bug beast slayer.
Yeah, right. Tree beasts everywhere, blah. I think they tree beasts are more a pain in the taff than the metal beasts.
Yep, for sure. They don't have any vents you can extinguish.
But they make funny noises. And random
I won't
intrude
do an impression.
when they work.
There we go.
I cannot
That's
do that.
beautiful.
I think it was a nice way to conclude the Metal Age. Victoria's death and sacrifice was necessary for the plot of Thief 3, as imagine after stealing the paw instead of the other lead, it's just a pissed Victoria, the plot wouldn't be smooth. And I believe it helped in Garrett's growth. A random intruder 9326 on YouTube. Yeah, many players make a huge connection to the third game. So I never felt that it's that important, but many do. How is your opinion on that?
I feel like it's unclear why Garrett showed up for Victoria, and I think it's deliberately unclear. I think that the thing that is remarkable about it is that he doesn't show up for anyone before this point, and so it stands out as a big change in his character. The one thing I will say is that the ending cutscene, as cool as it is, cuts off really abruptly with Garrett remarking on the prophecy, and he's just like, "Tell me," and then it cuts off. There's it's such a cliffhanger that if Thief 3 had never come out, it would have felt very irritating, you know. So I like the idea, but I don't like the abrupt cutoff with no denouement.
But wasn't
I
it
don't
the
know.
same in Thief 1? Like similar?
Thief
There's a
1 ends.
teaser.
Yeah, there's a bit of a teaser in that they have a walk and a talk, and
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of course.
and then he says, "Beware the dawn of the Metal Age," and then the camera pans up all dramatic, and it feels like a real ending. But in this one, he's just like, "This was all written. Tell me," and then it cuts to black.
Your Garrett voice is awful.
I'm sorry. It doesn't even play the credits though. That's the thing. Like it just cuts off and goes to the menu. You have to click the credits button yourself.
Didn't we at one point make fun like, hey, we recreate we create a Thief mod where you do all the voices?
Yes. Thief the Sethel Age.
The Sethel Age, right? Tell me, Karis must be stopped.
Garrett, art thou friend? Stop by mine chamber for a beer.
Yeah, kind of that. I'm sorry for that, listeners. But we should do that. This will promote the podcast endless, or they will be like, okay, and this guy is on the podcast, and I have to listen to that voice all the time. Nah,
I'm gonna move into voice acting next. I'm
You
gonna quit
don't
my day
subscribe.
job.
He's gonna
you
do the
do
voice
great.
more.
You do great voices. That's not the thing, but more of the jokey characters, I would say.
Hanna-Barbera cartoons, though.
No, like guards and stuff. Like I did on the Black Parade. You know, I
Yes.
sent in 3 voices, and at one point I was one of the chosen ones for maybe being the big bad villain, and I'm very happy that they didn't do that. So I'm a goofy guard, which actually is really cool.
What was your role name? Was it Thug 2?
Yep. Hope it's not the clap.
I remember I played through that and I looked for you, and I had a friend over, and whenever you spoke, I was like, "Shut up, Alex is talking."
Overpriced boots, overpriced food, overpriced everything. That's me.
It's like real life.
Yeah, no, very expensive shoes. But after Cease to Exist on YouTube said, I understand why it's so divisive, but I absolutely love Soulforge, and I think it's an incredibly satisfying ending. I saw someone else on YouTube liken it to being sent to destroy the Death Star all by yourself. And that's such a perfect analogy. It's so massive and daunting by the time you finish it, you feel like you've accomplished an absolutely Herculean task. That being said, it's noticeably unfinished in a couple of respects. Some areas are weirdly sparse, for instance, and I even remember there being a random ladder going to nowhere for no reason. Lol. But at the same time, I feel like if the mission were stuffed with NPCs, it would almost be too hard, you know? What I really found interesting is that this mission gets a lot of love. I would have thought that the opinions are, that there's way more hate about this. But in general, I think people put everything in context and mostly get a positive resume, I would say.
Yeah, I was also surprised by the number of positive comments we have. Like, I agree that it does feel like you've accomplished something big when you finish it, but for me, it's not. It's not because I feel super rewarded by that completion. It's because I'm like, thank God I finished it. You know, I made it, but I'm not necessarily happy about all of the journey.
But that's always the thing. Like, if you finally finish it, then it feels very satisfying, in my opinion. I remembered like 1 or 2 years ago, I played it on expert, and yes, it was a hell of a ride. Especially that one room I described, where we were with the elevator and with the bridge. I hated that. I had to reload so many times until it worked. I think I did the mistake. I quick saved right before, and a bomb was already flying at me, um, which was very hard to, yeah, to avoid after reloading. But I think when you're done with something, it's like a huge boss fight. But when you're done, the satisfaction is, like in Dark Souls, it can get annoying as hell. But when you've done it, it's like, yes, I did that, and then you are proud of you a bit. So that's the good outcome at the end. And maybe that now, if I review myself, maybe that's why the mission. I also had a more positive look at the mission after I beat it. During the mission, I hate it. It's like like an ex-girlfriend, Like during the relationship, you hate her, but afterwards, you're like, "Hey, I finished her." No,
Well, that word has multiple contexts.
I
but
know.
no, I see. I see. I see.
I
What you
mean,
mean, though.
killing her.
Yes.
So
Oh, that went dark. I thought I was gonna go in a different direction. No, but I agree with you. It's like work. It's like you're doing something. I mean, hey, to say it's still fun, but like it's one of those things like after you're done with it, you're like, oh wow, I've come so far, like in this mission, in this game, narrative wise, gameplay wise, you feel like, oh, it was an obstacle. It was something that you overcame. It's that good feeling that video games give you when they're challenging and fun.
I tried so hard, I got so
Ugh,
far, but
I
in
knew I
the
said something
end,
lyrically
it
triggery.
didn't even matter.
I hate Linkin Park.
I was gonna say, going back earlier, I was gonna add something too. I'm a fan of cliffhanger endings. I'm definitely a fan, I think, of the first game's cliffhanger more because they give you that tease of what could come next, so you can imagine, oh, what's the metal age? Like, what does that mean? Like, if having not played this game,
The
you
Metal
can
Age,
speculate on what's gonna happen.
the
But
Metal
with
Age
this,
is Karis forming the band.
yeah, exactly. Soulforge. But with this game, it's kind of like he's like, oh yeah, there's other prophecies. This was being foretold. And he's just like, okay, well, and show me. So it's kind of there's really no you could end there didn't have to be a Deadly Shadows. I mean, it would have been a cliffhanger that maybe wouldn't have been the most satisfying, but I think you can end Thief right here. Whereas like if there never would have been a Thief 2, it would have been really crappy to have the Thief Dark Project go beware of the coming of the Metal Age and then nothing. But this game, you could end it and you'd have ideas and speculation, but there's no definitive direction on where it was going to go.
So, Jake, did you just remove furniture from your room? Because you're echoing a bit.
Oh, no, maybe I sat back a little bit.
Yeah,
Is that
maybe a
better?
bit closer or something. Yeah.
Oh, okay. I was relaxing too much. I was getting all.
Yeah, stop
Getting
that.
all.
This is a professional podcast. Yeah,
I know.
I
No
will send,
relaxation.
as I say for years now, you will get the money soon.
Yes, of course.
So
My check is in the mail.
3 comments left. Lot Buffert, I like that name from the forums. I pretty much hated the mission. Finally, when I first played it in 2000, but in retrospect, it feels closer in mood and gameplay to a System Shock 2 mission than a Thief mission. So I now enjoy the oppressive mood and the sneaking and manufacturing items element, since I also enjoy System Shock 2. But I get the mood that actually play the mission about once every 3 years, to be honest. It's just a daunting prospect. Yeah, I think we already discussed that. But he was the one who gave me the idea of a System Shock mission to look at it like that, and it totally makes sense. So a great observation, Lord Buford. MX Leader said the biggest problem with Sabotage at Soulforge is its immense map size. I get that factory style missions make sense to be somewhat large, but the scale was to the point that you'd lose momentum and some of the thrill by just shuffling back and forth through areas. Yeah, and that's the problem. You mentioned already, Seth. Yeah, speed potions. You would have liked a lot of them. Or like, yeah, no, you don't know that comic. It's European. But I just say Asterix and Obelix. I don't know if you guys know
I
that.
actually do know that.
Yeah, and there's the Obelix, and they have this magic potion which that makes them strong, and they can fight the Romans or whoever the enemy is. And there's Obelix, and he's a huge guy. And as a child, he fell into the pot with that magic potion, so he's strong. For his whole life, he never has to drink the potion again. And yeah, maybe that would be great here, like a huge pot of speed potion.
Or just, put them near every single radio tower. Like have one just an emergency speed potion behind a glass bar. Gotta break it.
Yeah, but the running around here is actually very tedious. Yes, it makes sense because this place is actually built for the huge things that are walking around here. But from a gameplay perspective, they did a lot to annoy you here.
In defense, I will say there are some extra pathways you can unlock, but I just didn't even bother. Like, I was so done with it, I didn't even bother trying to unlock the extra fast pathways.
And because it's so disorientating at a certain point, you don't want to open up new pathways to figure out like where do they get you, and you're like, okay, I know I have to take the long way, but at least I know where I'm going at this point. And yeah, it's a bit annoying in many. I think that's one of the most called criticisms. And then there is Lord Taffer. It's been about 6 or 7 years since I last time finished Thief 1 and Thief 2, so my opinions about OMs might be a bit different today than what they were back then. Since then, I've started drum adding myself and played quite a lot of FMs, so those things have somewhat changed the way I experience and feel about FMs, OMs. I will give him that. From what I recall, I did like Sabotage at Soulforge a lot. It felt like a final challenge against all those robots and Karath himself. I really like Karath speaking to Garrett. It intensified the tension and made me visualize Karath desperately trying to locate Garrett and kill him. That's the question. Does he desperately try to locate him? I think we discussed that already. Like, or is he just like, oh yeah, there's like Garrett, like a little mice in my in my basement, a mouse that's not bothering me.
I think he just really loves Garrett to the point that defeating Garrett or making Garrett into nothing is like an objective for him in and of itself.
Like the Joker.
Yeah, but he just
Batman.
there you go. He just really likes the company,
But speaking of fan missions, like other comments also mentioned that one said like, for me the true Soulforge nowadays is the Builder's Paradise by Fire Mage,
which is a really cool mission.
Yeah, to a certain degree, like this one. I think the Builder's Paradise is the better Soulforge. I would agree, because it's way more interesting. The architecture is so amazing, and especially when you know what were the circumstances, how they had to create these missions, with the Thief 2 limitations for the contest. This is an amazing piece of art, and it has so many interesting things. But yeah, I would say like that is a Soulforge. This adds a lot to the things we were criticizing, like the looks and
It's
yeah.
also more threatening in general. Like, I mean, granted, it has the advantage
with Colonel, with that Colonel that is following you around and stuff. Yes.
Yeah, it has the advantage of being made a lot later and with a lot of additions and modifications to the engine. But I do think that it accomplishes like the menace, the feeling of menace.
And
pretty
it has
thoroughly.
this great plot that you visit, the facility actually is dead, You know, it's long. The people are long gone, but Karis is still there. You know, and some it's so the Builder's Paradise. I didn't like it gameplay wise at a certain point, but the mission itself is so impressive. Wow.
The alternate history.
Yep. It's really, really great. So play the Builder's Paradise. I think we interviewed Firemage. Yeah, we had him on the podcast for that episode for the mission. Yeah. So I think that sums it up. Or is there anything you guys think needs to be added?
I think my soul has been forged.
Soulforge.
Yeah, I think everything was pretty well covered. Lore, the level design, and everything pretty well covered. It's Soulforge.
I got to complain. I got to complain about everything I don't like, so I'm happy.
Okay. Yeah, I think that's it. So it was a great journey with the podcast as well. This was the final mission. There's nothing to discuss about Thief anymore.
It's
So
all over.
So thank you guys for joining our podcast, being there, and thank you very much for all of this. We will now start a Patreon, so you can give us money in hindsight. And
And we'll be living off royalties, so be generous.
so we are outside at last, and thank you, Jake and Seth, again for your time, and thanks for the chat and everybody, the listeners. Blah 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 blah. We finished Thief 2. Awesome. So see you around, and bye bye.
Bye.
Right.
Karath, thine end is near. Cease thy squirmings and pray for thy very soul.